Hey gang, I was sent to a video that apparently explains why atheism defeats atheism. It's actually just one in a collection of apologetics, and for those who saw the title card, they'll know it happens to be number 69 on the list. Yes, for the more immature members of my audience, that number is rife with humorous possibilities. But a classy and respectable channel like mine would not stoop to making jokes like that.
If you guys are really us, what number are we thinking of? 69, dudes!
Did we pay the gas bill?
Yes, we paid the gas bill. I remember because the check number ended in 69 and we high-fived.
Why?
Never mind.
What number you want to wear?
69! Take the number 69! It's hilarious!
Is that number taken?
How do I know it's not version number 85 or 322 or 558?
Or 69 or 420?
Yeah, and then you...
Michael.
$69.
$69.
Apparently, we aren't classy or respectable. Let's just take a look.
We're talking about Alvin Plantinga's evolutionary argument against naturalism, one form of the argument from reason. Plantinga's argument goes like this. Premise 1. If both naturalism and evolution are true, then human cognitive faculties are the result of blind mechanisms such as natural selection.
Let's start with this one. That is basically how evolution works. Small mutations occur between generations. If these mutations are beneficial to the organism, they'll be able to outcompete their brethren and breed, passing on that mutation through the population. As these mutations build up, the population changes until it's so different from the original population that we can say it's made up of completely different organisms. This is all based on observed evidence.
Premise 2, natural selection selects for survival-related behaviors, not necessarily true beliefs, except to the extent belief is appropriately related to behavior.
This is assuming that evolutionary development of humans made us born with certain knowledge or beliefs, and that we should only use those beliefs that we were born with. This is bad reasoning. When trying to work out what is true, I don't depend on our beliefs, ingrained or otherwise. I like to use what the evidence has been shown to be correct. My beliefs affect how I behave. For instance, my stance that people are basically decent and we should treat each other with respect is a belief I hold. But when I want to determine what is true, like scientific claims, then I prefer to use evidence as the deciding factor, not belief.
Premise 3, if evolutionary naturalism is true, then the primary function of human cognitive abilities is to promote survival-related behaviors, not necessarily the production of true beliefs.
Yes, and as tool users, early humans need to be able to understand the world around them to survive. But it has to be noted that we don't always come to the correct conclusions. We evolved as roughly 5 to 6 foot tall bipedal apes, and our intuitive understanding of the world is tied to that. It's no wonder that we have come to conclusions about the world that were wrong. From the point of view of our ancestors, it was a rational thought to accept the Earth was flat and the sun moved around it. Obviously, this was incorrect, as we discovered evidence that showed the Earth was in fact a spheroid and moved around the sun. New evidence resulted in a better understanding of our world. This is what the scientific method is about, making claims about the world and using observations and evidence to support those claims.
Premise 4, given that it is not natural selection's primary function, the probability of evolutionary naturalism producing cognitive faculties that lead to true beliefs is low or inscrutable.
Unless, of course, being able to work out what is true is beneficial, in which case it would be incredibly likely to evolve the ability to work out what is true. Again, beliefs have nothing to do with it. Humans, as I said in previous videos, are not the strongest or fastest organisms out there, but our survival is dependent on understanding the world around us. We could hope our descendants would evolve claws, or work out that a sharp rock did a similar job right away. We could try to evolve the ability to outrun our prey, or understand how to track them down by the signs they left as they moved. And evolving a brain able to work out cause and effect like that was an incredibly beneficial adaptation to evolve.
Premise 5, one of the allegedly true beliefs held by the naturalist is a belief in metaphysical naturalism itself.
I accept naturalism because so far I have not been shown that anything exists that isn't part of the natural world. Now, by definition, the supernatural doesn't exist. I'm not saying that things that we consider supernatural don't exist. There could be things like ghosts, goblins, or a fast food restaurant that has a generally good breakfast menu out there. But if we received evidence that supposedly supernatural things like that do exist, then they would be part of the natural world, and we'd have to update our understanding to accommodate them. This is why the scientific process is considered a naturalistic endeavor. Science relies on evidence to determine what is true, and all the evidence we have is natural.
In conclusion, therefore, the devotee of evolutionary naturalism has a defeater for any belief he holds, and a stronger defeater for evolutionary naturalism itself.
Again, you're focusing on belief rather than fact. Scientific inquiry does not depend on what we believe is true, but rather what can be shown to be true. This is why scientific theories are modified or even discarded if new evidence comes to light that refutes what we already accept.
Over the past couple of weeks, we've been zeroing in on premise 4 and talking about the relationship between what we believe and what actions we end up taking. Now, last week I explained why Plantinga says that if evolutionary naturalism is true, then in all probability it would wind up leading to cognitive faculties that don't point toward truth. In other words, we wouldn't be able to trust anything we think.
As I said, we can, and have been, wrong about what we think is true. This is why evidence, not belief, is important for the scientific process. Very rarely will a paper be published that says, "I believe this is true," as the linchpin of their thesis. Reputable scientific journals and institutions depend on evidence-based claims, not simply beliefs. Scientists do not simply say, "I believe this is true, so everyone should believe me," but rather, "Here's what I think is true, and here's the evidence to back up that conclusion."
Now, William Alston argues that even if this is true, even if we have all sorts of reasons to believe that evolutionary naturalism should produce faulty reasoning abilities, all those reasons are overridden by the strong warrant we have in believing our cognitive conclusions are true.
We can trust our cognitive conclusions if repeated testing shows that they're valid. If we want to come to the conclusion that water freezes at 0 degrees centigrade, we can test that by repeatedly attempting to freeze water and record the temperature that it freezes at. This is how the scientific process works. If repeated testing of a hypothesis consistently results in the observed conclusion, we can accept that theory that we have worked out as true. Similarly, with evolution, we have repeatedly seen that organisms have variations between generations, and that organisms that are best able to survive and thrive are more likely to pass on their genes, eventually resulting in speciation.
A warrant refers to whether we are justified in holding to our most fundamental beliefs. We all have to make certain starting assumptions. It's unavoidable. Every argument needs to have a starting point. But not all starting points are created equal. Some are more warranted than others.
The starting point for every scientific theory is, what have we observed? Followed closely by, what do we think caused this observation? And then, how can we test that claim? Finally, testing the claim enough times to conclude if the hypothesis is supported.
Now, William Alston argues that we are warranted in assuming that our rational abilities are reliable as just such a starting point. And in that, he is absolutely correct. But he's misunderstanding the nature of Plantinga's conclusion. Plantinga says that the devotee of evolutionary naturalism has a defeater for any belief he holds, and a stronger defeater for evolutionary naturalism itself.
From a philosophical point of view, even if our reasoning wasn't correct, organisms could still have evolved. We might not understand why or how they evolved, but they still could have, no matter how bad our reasoning is. Organisms evolved before humans understood the concept, or even before there were humans. Our understanding, or lack of understanding, of a natural process is not a defeater of that process. Humans could have evolved without the ability to work out cause and effect, but just because we couldn't understand a concept doesn't mean that concept is false.
A defeater is something that makes it inconsistent to simultaneously hold two different beliefs at the same time. For example, Plantinga asks what would be the result if we held a belief that our head was made of glass. If we held that belief, could we simultaneously also believe that our head was made of flesh and bone? No, those two beliefs are inconsistent with one another. So if we believe our head is made of glass, then we have a defeater for the belief that our head is made of flesh and bone. The reverse is also true. If we believe our head is made of flesh and bone, then we have a defeater for the belief that our head is made of glass. We cannot consistently believe both things are true.
Here's the thing. Belief shouldn't enter into determining what is true. Do we have evidence that heads are made of glass, or evidence that heads are made of flesh and bone? If you want to take the hypothesis that heads are made of glass, we can test that out by studying heads and determining what they're made of. Out of all the human heads that have ever been studied by science, I would say that approximately 0 have been found to be made out of glass. Now, if we find people who did have heads made of glass rather than flesh and bone, we'd have to update our conclusion that life is carbon-based and accept that silicone-based life is also possible. Evolving for survival is not a defeater for evolving to discover what is true, when our survival depends on figuring out what is true. To develop tools, evolving to work out rational conclusions for the environment they lived in helped our ancestors survive, and we were able to use that ability to work out, with the scientific theory, more complex ideas using observation and experimentation.
Now, I agree with Alston that the belief in the reliability of our rational abilities is strongly warranted and a strongly warranted foundational belief. But what Plantinga's argument shows is that if we believe evolutionary naturalism is true, then we have a defeater for the belief in reliable cognitive abilities. Similarly, if we believe in reliable rationality, we have a defeater for the belief in evolutionary naturalism.
No, we don't. I can accept that as tool users who needed to understand the world around us to survive, we evolved the ability to work out cause and effect, resulting in the scientific method of using evidence rather than belief to determine what is true. Eventually, this led to our understanding of where we came from in a genetic sense.
Alston acts like if we have a strong enough reason to believe in the reliability of our rationality, then we can just go right on believing in evolutionary naturalism too. But he's just misunderstanding what a defeater is. Those two beliefs are in tension with each other. If you believe in one, you cannot consistently believe in the other as well. They can't both be true.
Why can't it be true? Your premise assumes that survival is all that matters for evolutionary progress, but for our ancestors, understanding the world around them was a key component to survival. The proto-human apes that thrived were the ones that could make and use simple tools. Over the generations, we evolved the ability to work out complex and even seemingly contradictory truths like the actual shape and movement of the Earth compared to how it appears to us. We can therefore absolutely accept 2 points that, 1, we evolved in the best way to survive, and 2, resulted in an organism that can achieve complex understanding of the world around us.
So in the end, Plantinga has shown that if you believe in evolutionary naturalism, then you can't consistently believe your reasoning abilities are reliable. But if you can't believe your reasoning abilities are reliable, then you can't even trust your belief in evolutionary naturalism itself. The position ends up being logically inconsistent.
Even if we accept your claim, and I hope I was able to make a convincing case against it, but even if we do accept that we can't trust our reasoning if we evolved, that doesn't necessarily lead to evolution being wrong, or even a deity existing. Even if Darwinian evolution was completely disproved, if all the evidence that biologists have looked at over the years were somehow refuted, and we had no idea how biological diversity occurred, that still doesn't mean we have to accept that a deity exists. We would simply say that we have no idea how to explain biological diversity. It's not an either-or, where either evolution is true or a deity exists. If we want to find out what is true, we need to use the reasoning that we, apparently, evolved to have.